Hello, I'm Eric Edmeades. I'm the founder of WildFit, and we are beginning. And first of all, I just want to say welcome. Welcome for coming, and I'm glad that you're here. In fact, right away, you being here tells me something, and that is that we share some things in common, and that is some general curiosity about how things can be better. And in this case, particularly how our health and our relationship with food can be better. And so I'm going to jump in right away, and I'm going to make a couple of statements here at the beginning, just to be really clear about what's going on. I want you to know, first of all, that in this day of tons of information and, just webinars and videos you can watch and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of content out there. And I think we can debate the merit or the quality or the interest of the various bits of content that are out there. I want you to know that this webinar, for some of you that are watching right now, will be a turning point. That there will be one or two or more things that we discuss during this webinar that will change the way you think. And what I mean by that is that there's going to be some information here that is going to both maybe change your perspective on a few things, and then also going to give you some information that'll make you think, that's really worth acting upon. So I want you to know this is going to be valuable. I'm telling you this because I know that often when people tune into a webinar or they do some video training and they're kind of distracted by their life, the fridge is over there and Facebook is over here, and so there's kind of a lack of attention a little bit. And what I want you to know is that's totally okay. If you want to passively listen right now, you can do that. What I also want you to know is there's going to come a moment where you're going to find yourself paying attention. And that's because we're going to be covering some really good stuff here. So let me give you a little personal background for those of you who don't know me. My name, as I said, is Eric Edmeades. I'm the founder of WildFit. I'm also a serial entrepreneur. And what I mean by serial entrepreneur is not that I've been involved in the cereal business. I just mean that I've had quite a few different businesses in a variety of different industries. I started my first company in England in 1997. And it was a tech company doing wireless networking and mobile computing and data capture and that kind of stuff. And I ended up selling that company after 9 years and sort of retiring from the IT sector. And then I took on a project of traveling around the world for 2 years as a business speaker. So I just traveled and I spoke in 20 countries around the world, sharing ideas about business and marketing and so on. I then got involved in purchasing a movie studio in Northern California, and we got to work on some really cool movies, like movies in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise and Mission Impossible, and just some Iron Man and Avatar and some really cool things. But what was really fascinating about that business is that as a result of the physical, practical special effects we were doing, we were presented with an opportunity to start another company that did high fidelity medical simulation for largely for military application. In other words, training military medics on what to do in really traumatic situations. Really fascinating stuff. And the reason I'm mentioning this to you is not that it has a great deal to do with WildFit, but that it has to do with business, and that's largely been my background. But the reason that that's been my background is that I took control of my health. And so underneath everything that I've been doing for the last over 20 years, underneath all of that, there's been a pervasive and consistent passion of mine that has had to do with diet, nutrition, optimal health, and optimal experience of life. And that is really where WildFit got born from. In fact, I can tell you that as a young man, I was not particularly healthy. I think some of you have heard this background from me before. Some of you have gone through our video trainings and such. That's great. The short version is I wasn't healthy. I'd spent 10 years visiting doctors, getting prescribed with drugs and injections and even surgery, fix this, fix that. And nothing helped until one day somebody came along and told me, well, maybe you need to look at your food. Maybe your diet has something to do with this, which I thought at the time was insane because, maybe my diet could be a little bit more healthy, but I didn't regard it as an unhealthy diet. I didn't regard it as sure, maybe I ate a little more pizza than I should, and I had soft drinks from time to time, and I ate fast food, but everybody did. It was normal, so it couldn't be so bad. I mean, there were people eating a lot worse than me, right? And so I really didn't think food was such a big issue. But the friend that was talking to me had a lot of credibility with me, and And so in the end, he implored me to make a few changes and just test it. And I thought, well, look, what's 30 days? I'll give it a go. And so I tried it. And over the next 30 days, my entire life would change. After 2 weeks, I was able to breathe through my sinuses for the first time in probably close to 10 years. The acne, I'd had cystic acne that was all into my neck. Like it hurt to smile sometimes, and it was clearing up and gone. After 30 days, I had lost about 15 kilograms or 30 pounds. Debilitating stomach cramps that I'd been having for years were gone. Like my entire life was different. And let's talk about appearance. My appearance changed so radically that I landed, my mother was living in South Africa, and I flew there to visit her. And I got off the plane, I walked down the steps to the greeting area, and my mom looked through me. Like she looked through me. She didn't see me at all. And she kept looking around, trying to find her son. But I was there with my girlfriend, and my girlfriend at that time had bright red hair. Okay, she always said it was strawberry blonde, but I'm telling you it was red. Anyway, the point is she had this bright strawberry blonde hair. And my mom saw her hair and saw her, and then as a result did a double take and then saw me and got that confused look of what happened. And because my physical appearance had changed so dramatically by changing my food. And then of course there's the things that are harder to measure, like my energy levels had changed dramatically, my speed of thought, my memory, like everything began to change. And that made me curious. It made me really curious, and it should make you curious too, that how could I possibly spend almost 10 years visiting doctors and specialists and get no recovery, no alleviation, except occasionally they'd give me a pill that would help this symptom be a little bit better for a short time. But at no point did I stop being an allergy person with regular illness and throat infections. At no point did that stop with all the treatments they gave me. Sure, they'd give me a spray, and for a few days I could breathe through my nose, but it wouldn't solve the problem. And yet all of a sudden, one friend of mine could give me a little dietary advice and bam, everything changed. That's gotta make you curious. It certainly did me. And that curiosity drove me to start digging, start researching. Now remember, back then there was no Google, right? There was no, just ask the internet, right? It was a different time. And so I started asking people around me. I started reading books everywhere. I even enrolled in university at the University of Bristol to study archaeology because I felt like some of the answers might be in our past. I mean, I really took it seriously. And then I found myself asking doctors some interesting questions. Like I remember one of the first doctors I asked was actually my uncle, who was an orthopedic surgeon. And I asked him, I said, how long did you go to medical school? And I don't remember, it was like 8-10 years or something like that, between the initial medical school and then specializing and so on. And I said, in all the years that you spent in medical school, how much time did you spend studying food and nutrition? How much? And as it turns out, he turned his head to one side and he's like, I don't remember any. And I have asked doctor after doctor after doctor that question over the years, and that's routinely the answer I get. And in fact, just a few weeks ago, I was doing a talk all about WildFit for 1,000 business owners, because let me be really clear. One of the very best business investments a business owner can make is in their health. Less time off sick, more productivity, faster memory. There's a lot of reasons for having optimal health when you're an entrepreneur or a business owner. So there I was speaking for 1,000 business owners in Germany. And I told this story about asking my uncle about that. And then I just said, I want you to know something. I'm not vilifying doctors here, I said. I really, really respect anybody who's willing to dedicate that level of their life to academia so that they can go out and heal people. I really respect that. What I'm concerned about is the model of education they're facing. And I said at that point in front of these 1,000 people, I said, are there any doctors here in the room right now? And it turned out there was one. He's sitting down in the third row there. And I said, hey, I'm curious. I mean, how long did you go to medical school? He said 6 years. I said, okay. In that 6 years, how much time did you spend studying food? Microphone in his hand, 1,000 people watching, cameras rolling. He said, none. Think about that. Think about that. The next time your doctor tells you to put something in your mouth, whether it be food or a pill or whatever, think about that. Think about the fact that when I was a little boy and I was apparently allergic to things like orange juice and milk, I'm not allergic to orange juice today, but back then, apparently that's what the doctor told my mom. And she said, well, we're going on this boat trip to America, to North America. And, he's got to drink something. And the doctor, I'm sure, said, drink water. And he says, he's a kid. He doesn't like water. And he said, well, what does he like? And my mom goes, well, and she probably had a bit of shame about this, but she's like, he likes Coca-Cola. And he said, great, he needs hydration. Give him Coca-Cola. A doctor said that. So what I'm really getting at is that I got really, really curious about a number of things. And that was, how is it that food could have such a big impact on my experience of life? And then how is it that the doctors in my world, both the ones I was related to and the ones I was, going to see, weren't giving me that advice? And so my real quest began. And over the next, 20 years or so, I've undertaken an Indiana Jones-like exploration into the world of health. Some of you guys will be familiar, I'm sure, with the paleo diet and Dr. Lauren Cordain's work, which I'm a big fan of. There are definitely some differences that I'll discuss with you, but I'm a big fan. And I actually had a conversation with Lauren Cordain, I don't know, maybe about a year ago. And I asked him, I was really curious, like, what made him come up with the idea that we should look at our evolutionary past in order to think a little bit about our diet today? And it turns out that in 1997, the same year as me, we both read, and this probably has something to do with the birth of the internet, and documents getting out onto the internet. But in 1997, he and I read the exact same paper written by Boyd Eaton, I believe was his name. And it was a paper all about the idea of evolutionary biology and what really would have been the beginning at that point of a science that would now be called nutritional anthropology. And so I started studying everything that I could about these things. I mean, I was fascinated. As I mentioned, I went off to go study archaeology because I thought the answers might be there. And then, and this may seem a little extreme to you, but then I actually went to go live with some Bushmen in Africa and go visit with them and actually stay with them a number of times. I really took this seriously. So here's the good news for you. I'm going to share some things with you that I've learned through this journey that are going to give you the opportunity to make immediate change, really, right now. So you might be on this webinar thinking, okay, well, people run these free webinars and they're going to try and sell me stuff. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would love for you to come and do the full WildFit challenge, and I'll describe it for you a little bit later in case you're curious. But I want you to know that I'm going to be giving you steps that you can take to change the way your health exists right now. Whether you have serious issues that you'd like to resolve or whether you're already feeling pretty good and you just like to refine, I'm going to give you some things that are really going to help. And I'll tell you why. Because in all the research that I undertook, I focused on two things. I focused on nutrition itself. And one of the principles that I considered was this very basic scientific principle. And that is that every species on Earth has a diet. Every species on Earth has a diet. Leafcutter ants have a diet. It doesn't involve eating leaves. Elephants have a diet that involves eating leaves and bark and grass. And they eat about 200 kilograms or 400 or 500 pounds of it. And then they drink tons and tons of water. And cheetahs, they eat 2.5 kilograms or 5 pounds of fresh meat every day if they can when they're hunting. We know when we study animals, we think of their diet, but humans go on diets. Hell, even pets can go on diets now, can't they? Right? But hang on a second. What's the species on Earth that deals with the most disease, that suffers with the most illness? Homo sapiens, right? And then right behind us is our household pets and our zoo animals and, our agricultural animals. The sickest animals on Earth are the animals fed by people. And so what we need to do is make a big change. So I did a bunch of research into that area, which was fabulous. And I'll share that with you in a moment. And then we had to look at something else. Why is it that people know what to do and don't do it? You know what I'm talking about, right? People know, eat a little bit more of this, eat a little bit less of that, and they're not doing it. Or they are doing it. They say, they feel, they think, but when it really comes down to it, they're not really doing it as well as maybe they would like to be, or the way even they think they are. Here's what I mean by that is that, people set resolutions or set goals and they go, I'm going to work out like this and I'm going to eat more of this and all that, or eat less of that and so on. And what happens is their fortitude wanes. Pretty soon they make an exception, right? And by the way, do we need a very big reason to make an exception? No, not at all. I mean, we can make an exception because we had a bad day at work. We can make an exception because we had a great day at work. We can make an exception because it was our birthday. Oh, we can make an exception because it was a relative's birthday, a friend's birthday, a coworker's birthday. In fact, a coworker that we don't even like's birthday. And so we should be making an exception. What I I'm going to share with you is some really interesting discoveries we've made into why it is that willpower does not work, and how people can make changes in their psychology that make change easy for them. We have an unbelievably high success rate in WildFit. Like I myself have been blown away by how unbelievably successful people are on the program, and then maintaining and going and staying on the program, and making a lifestyle change rather than going on a diet. And so at the intersection of really powerful nutrition and behavioral change psychology, we can create something that has never really been seen before in the diet industry, and that is truly lasting change. And that's what I'm going to show you. And by the way, I want to demonstrate to you what truly lasting change actually means and looks like. So just take a look at this for a minute. Let's see if I've got this set up. This correctly, you should be able to see April. And April, these are some before and after pictures of April. April is actually a friend of mine now. She actually is on our team. She's a certified WildFit coach, and that's all irrelevant because these things happened long before any of that. She became a coach. She ended up joining our team because she just became such a raving also want to share with you this one here, which is Sabine. Sabina is she's in Stockholm, and you would be forgiven if you looked at these two pictures and thought that it was two different people. You'd be forgiven for thinking that, but it's not. This is the same woman, guys. And let me tell you something about her. She is phenomenal. She's an incredible healer. She does a really, really great job of, she's like, the best way to describe her is like an osteopath combined with a chiropractor, or an osteopath, combined with a magician is a better way to put it. She just does really great work with people. But one of the challenges that she faced was that she was having some difficulty in dealing with her own health and her own issues. I want you to know that these pictures here are 90 days apart. 90 days apart. Now, I want to be clear about something. We're not talking about weight loss here. I know weight loss is evident here, and we're talking more about weight loss, but it's really important to understand something about weight loss, that it is massively misunderstood by the health industry and the diet industry. Weight loss is not something that should be stimulated by calorie restriction and starving people. The fact is that the body wants to be at an ideal weight as long as it feels safe to be at that weight. And so while WildFit is not a weight loss program, it may in fact be the most effective weight loss program there is. It is not designed to be one because weight loss or even weight gain, depending on where somebody is, getting to your natural weight, getting to your optimal weight is a side effect of health. When somebody is very, very healthy, their body will return to the weight that they really need to be at. When somebody is following a good nutritional program with good seasonality in it, then what happens is that their weight goes to its natural place. So I want to give you a couple of other ones here. This is Amber. And again, you can see that in a course of 90 days, she's made a massive difference. And I want you to think about what that means in terms of quality of life. It means that her heart is not having to supply oxygen to to all that additional tissue. It means that her lymphatic system has less work to do. It means that she's happier. Another great example here is Ellie's in Norway, and these two pictures really, I just love them because they don't only show the change in her health, but they actually show to a large degree the change in her attitude. The attitude on the left is, boy, I better break into this here bag of snacks. The attitude on the right is, watch out, world, man, here I come. And so Ellie has been a longstanding. She's been a client of ours for many years. I saw her the other day on a webinar. She's doing great. What I'm talking about here again is 90 days worth of change. And I know that weight seems to be a prevalent thing, but that's what shows up on the camera. I want you to think about what else kicks into that. Some of you may know Paul. Paul's also a good friend of mine, and Paul's very well known around the world for things like photo reading and a bunch of other really fabulous things, meditation and so on. He's a brilliant guy. And then one day he was getting ready to do a webinar, and his team sent over the landing page with the webinar, and he looked at the picture and he goes, guys, what the hell? Who is this in the picture? I don't recognize that person. That's not who I see in the mirror every day. Well, that's because the picture that they put on the webinar was a picture from 3 months earlier before he did the WildFit challenge. And the picture that you see here shows him he sent this to me. He goes, Eric, this is the picture they were going to use on my webinar, and this is how I look today. He and his wife both did the program together, and they got really excellent results. So showing this to you because I am going to share with you on this webinar how you can stimulate some of these changes for you, how you can stimulate some of these changes in your life right now. Again, we're talking about the intersection between ideally how should we be eating, and then far more importantly, because you kind of already know that, right? You already know. Come on. You know that you probably should be eating. And again, some of you are probably already doing very well. I'm just saying, you know that probably you should be eating a lot wider variety and more quantity of fresh vegetables, right? We know that. And we know we should probably eat more fresh fruit, but maybe not so much that we're overloaded with sugar. We know we need to get high quality fats and high quality proteins, which we can get from, plant sources like, say beans and nuts and that kind of stuff. Or we may, if we're not a vegetarian, we may get some of those things from, healthy fish and healthy meats and stuff, assuming that they're ethically raised and that they're responsibly raised and all that sort of stuff. So we kind of know, and we know we need to have a lot of water and fresh air. We know this. So now what we have to do is talk a lot about why it is that we're not doing it. And I want to share with you that you're dealing with a fairly significant challenge, and that is that the food marketing industry is not on our side. And I know for many of you who've gone through the video training with me, we've talked about this extensively. I don't want to spend a great deal of time on it. I just want to make a really subtle point here. And before I make this point, I also want you to know something else. I see lots of questions coming up in the chat and lots of comments. Thank you so very much. I keep them coming. I'm not likely going to let them interrupt my flow now because I want to make sure that I give you everything that I intend to give you during this webinar. But here's what I am going to do. When the webinar is over, I'm not going to turn it off. I'm going to stay here. And I'm going to answer even more of your questions at that point. So we're going to end on time, but then I'm going to focus on answering your questions. But the team is collecting them now. So if you post them in there, they'll grab some of those questions and make sure that I can answer for you at the end. Does that make sense? Are we good? All right. Now, what I was saying briefly about the food marketing industry, I just want you to think about one thing, and that is that the food industry has a primary concern. As an industry, each company has a primary concern. And here's what I'd love to see in the comments. What do you think that primary concern is? I'll give you some options even that you can choose from. Is their primary concern the overall health of the population? Or is their primary concern your personal individual health? Or is their primary concern profitability, sales, and revenues? Now, you get it. That's right, Donna, Lisa, Eva, you're nailing it. You're absolutely right. Their primary concern is about money. Now, I know that there are companies out there that are interested in other things. They're interested in people's health and producing ethical products. And there are companies like that, but we're not talking about the edges of the bell curve here. We're not talking about like the rarity. We're talking about the industry on the whole. McDonald's does not care about your health except for the degree to which their lawyers are now telling them to be concerned, because the kind of lawsuits that we once saw against tobacco companies are now about to start against the food industry. So yes, they're going to start to care, but not so much because they care, but because they're going to be forced to care through litigious, legal action. In the meantime, what they care about is their profits. Now, why is this important? It's important because they do what they can to boost their profits through a number of different ways. One of the ways they do it is through really effective marketing. They do everything they can to really market well and make you hungry, right? They want you to eat more than you need. Because look, once everybody's eating enough food, it's like, how do they get more profits? Get you to eat more food, right? So their marketing is designed to get you to eat more and more and more food. I'll give you an idea of how subtle this can be. There's a toothpaste company, and you guys probably know the one. I think that it's a North American brand called Aquafresh. And years ago, they created these commercials where they would show putting the toothpaste on the toothbrush. But then they had like 3 colors. Oh, as a kid, I so wanted the 3-color toothpaste. I was so excited about that. And so then they put the 3 colors on there, but the way they did it is they did 1 whole stripe of white, 1 whole stripe of blue, 1 whole stripe of red, and put 3 stripes on top of the toothpaste. Here's what's fascinating. People's consumption of toothpaste doubled when they saw those advertisements, because it was teaching them to put more toothpaste on the toothbrush, way more than was necessary. And I want you to understand, they know these things. They understand the psychology of it. They advertise food in a way to create demand. All right, now that's advertising. Now there's another thing that they do, and that is that if they serve you really good, nutritious food, you're going to be less hungry, right? If they do really good, powerfully nutritious food, you're going to be less hungry. So instead, what they're going to do is give you food that's nutritionally empty, because that way, after you've eaten, you still want to eat some more. I know, guys, you may think I'm cynical. You may think, oh man, this Eric guy, he's a conspiracy theorist. Let's be really clear. At the end of 2016, this all came out. Listen to what happened. The sugar industry back in the 1960s observed that there were a bunch of studies coming out that demonstrated a likelihood that sugar was actually the cause of heart disease. That sugar was a major cause or stimulant for heart disease. And so the sugar industry, through their lobbyist, hired 2 Harvard researchers, guys. This is not conspiracy theory. This is mainstream. Go out there, go check it out for yourself. They hired 2 Harvard researchers, and they got them to do a study that would blame fat for heart disease, that would frame fat. Now, by the way, there definitely are unhealthy fats out there. There are also necessary and healthy fats. But what they did is they got these guys to, I'm not kidding, to go out and do a study to blame heart disease on fat. And so then their study got picked up and published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which, by the way, would not happen today, because today, to get published in the journal, you have to disclose your funding sources of your study, right? So it wouldn't happen today, but it happened back then. And so what ended up happening was fat got vilified, and suddenly the low fat movement popped up, and you have to cut down your fat and cut down your fat. And while everybody was over there looking at fat, sugar was over there, unobserved. In the 1970s, there was almost nobody in the United States of America, and I'm just using them as the example here because these trends are happening all over the world. But in the 1970s, there was almost nobody in America under 40 with type 2 diabetes. Almost nobody. In fact, back then, there was child onset diabetes and there was adult onset diabetes, right? Now think about that. Today, we have to call them type 1 and type 2. Why? Because children are now getting type 2 diabetes. In fact, think about this. 1970s, almost nobody under 40. Today, there are apparently 20 million young people under 40 with diabetes or prediabetes. 20 million. By the way, just do some math on this for a minute with me. If those people are spending roughly $1,000 a year, I mean, maybe it's not them, maybe it's their insurance company. It doesn't matter. If they are roughly consuming $1,000 a year in medication and treatments, just roughly, either in insulin or pills to manage their situation, right? $1,000 a year, and there's 20 million of them. Okay, let's say half of them are taking the medication. Only half of them. The other half are not taking any medication yet. 10 million. $1,000 a year. Okay, that's a lot of zeros. So let's make it simpler. If it was 10 million of them and they were spending $10 a year, that'd be $100 million. If it's $100 a year with 10 million of them, $1 billion a year. At 1,000, it's $10 billion a year. Do you understand that they spent $50,000 and now they're generating $10 billion a year for the pharmaceutical industry? Never mind what they're doing in terms of the sugar they've sold. Now, again, this may seem a little alarmist for you. You can go Google it for yourself. It's not conspiracy theory. It's happening. The food industry uses, first of all, marketing like we talked about. Then secondly, they use manipulative lobbying tactics in order to drive demand for their food. And they use psychological games. 1 minute a food is good for you, then next minute it's bad for you. Why is that? Why does that happen? It happens by design, because in humans, what it creates is a strange type of confusion or amnesia. In fact, many of you will know I do a lot of public speaking. Here's one of the rules of public speaking. If you have 2 presenters on the stage, they should not contradict each other, because if they contradict each other, studies have shown when you ask the audience later which speaker they believed, They don't remember either one. They don't remember the fact from either one. They just go, well, two conflicting facts, no point in remembering, it's gone. So what happens is that when the food industry, 1 minute they're saying, oh, bread's really bad and bread's really good. Red wine's really bad. Red wine's really good. Eggs are bad. Eggs are good. Eventually what happens is we just go to confusion and simply eat what they tell us to eat. And as a consequence today, where 100 years ago, heart disease was not in the top 10 killers of humans. Neither was cancer. Not in the top 10. Now, heart disease is number 1, with 1/3 of people dying from heart disease. Cancer is number 2, with another third of people dying from cancer. And the vast majority, we now know, the vast majority of heart disease and cancer deaths are lifestyle caused. The vast majority. And so here we are. The food industry is making profits. The pharmaceutical and medical industry is making profits. And we are generating those profits through our suffering. So again, if I seem a little extremist, maybe I am. So now let's talk about what we can do to fight this a little bit. Here's what I want to do. I want to give you a little homework assignment, right? I want to give you something real. I want you to pay attention to 2 things. The first is I want you to notice when the food industry is attempting to manipulate your emotions in order to get you to do something. I'll give you some examples. Coca-Cola is one of my least favorite companies in the world. Now, as a child, any of my friends that grew up with me are like, oh my God, Eric was the biggest Coke fan in the world. You didn't even want to drink a Pepsi around Eric. He would go get you a Coke and show you the difference. Like, I was a Coke guy, right? Well, hang on. All of their advertising is about making you feel good, every bit of it. Pepsi tried all these other things like rock stars and Michael Jackson, and they tried the more traditional things. Coca-Cola stuck to their guns. They said, we're going to make you feel good and see our logo. Make you feel good and see our logo, to the point that eventually you see their logo and you feel good. It's basically a form of hypnosis. They're incredibly good at it. And by the way, Pepsi might give you the impression that they're like number 2 and they're really close behind. Yeah, they're number 2, but apparently Coke outsells them by something like 5 or 6 cans to 1. Coke has won the game by manipulating your emotions. And maybe not you, maybe you're done with Coke already at this point in life. Maybe you're not. But the fact is the population is not. And that's because Coca-Cola has spent their time saying, feel good, see the logo, feel good, see the logo. So I want you to look for instances where an ad is designed to make you smile. An ad, like there's a great, just recently, there was a really neat Coca-Cola one where you've got these 2 brothers and the big brother is picking on the little brother, picking on the little brother, picking on the little brother. And then the little brother's in the park and these bullies come along and the big brother comes up and he puts those bullies in their place and he protects his little brother. And the bullies were going to take the little brother's Coke. And then the big brother gets the bullies away and then he looks at the Coke and he's like the big brother. Normally he'd want to take it, right? But he lets his little brother have it. Don't you feel good? I mean, look, I have goosebumps telling you the story, right? You feel good, see the logo, feel good, see the logo. It's conditioning. So I want you to pay attention to that. Here's the other thing to pay attention to. Pay attention to when a food company attempts to hijack an event. They do this. They do their very best to buy an event. Like apple pie bought America. Like, here's what I mean by that. Oh, there's nothing more American than apple pie. Apples come from Kazakhstan. Okay, that's where they come from. They originate from Kazakhstan. There's nothing more American than apple pie. Listen, Donald Trump wants to stop all the immigration. He sits in the apples back. I'm kidding, little political humor. I'm just saying that apple pie has somehow managed to make themselves American. How about this? Pumpkin pie. Thanksgiving. You got to have your pumpkin pie. Really? You got to have pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving. Oh, and you got to have a candy cane at Christmas. So what they've done is they've taken events and said, well, now you have to have this because some of you may have noticed that the chocolate industry has bought Easter. Now, I'm not going to have a big theological discussion about religion here, but as I remember the story of Jesus and, you know, the whole event, the trial, and then the cross, and then the resurrection, I don't remember chocolate being part of that story. The 3 wise men, when he was born, did not. They brought frankincense, myrrh, and gold. They didn't bring Cadbury's and you know, they do you understand my point here? They bought it. They bought it, and now you're buying it. Maybe not you. Maybe you're past that, but many people are not. They're out there buying chocolate because after all, it's Easter. I mean, it's Easter, right? And so I want you to pay attention to the food industry manipulating the process. And then there's one more thing. I really want you to notice this. You may have noticed that sugar is in everything, right? I mean, it's in everything. Like, I was really shocked to find that sugar is like the number 2 ingredient in things that I would never add sugar to. If you go and buy like a jar of tomato sauce to make some pizza or pasta or something like that, you'll be shocked to find that sugar is almost always in the top 3, if not the top 5 ingredients. Think about that. Would you go home and chop up a bunch of tomatoes and onions, a little garlic, a little basil, maybe some oregano, make the sauce, 2 tablespoons of sugar? What? But they do it. Why? Why do they do that? Why do they add sugar to it? I mean, you wouldn't. So why do they? Why would they add the extra expense? I mean, they have to pay for the sugar to put it in. So why are they putting it in? Because one of the most incredible things about sugar is that sugar stimulates your appetite. Sugar makes you hungry. Now, you may not notice it because there's so much sugar in everything we're eating these days that you don't notice the direct linear relationship. I ate that, I got hungry. I ate that, I got hungry. Because it's a pervasive thing. This is why people need to snack all the time. This is why people's energy falls off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because there's so much sugar in everything. I'm talking about in things that you don't even realize sugar's in. I mean, here's one that you know, right? Breakfast cereal. It's in all breakfast cereals pretty much. I mean, it's very hard to find any breakfast cereal that doesn't have sugar in it. In fact, it's basically the second ingredient in most of them. Second ingredient. I was really shocked. I did this with a live audience where I was talking about the different things, and I had some of the ingredients, and I go, what's the number 2 ingredient on this? And everybody goes, sugar. And what's the number 2 ingredient on this? Everybody goes, sugar. And I held up Kellogg's Frosted Flakes. Now, for those of you, I know we have a very international group here today, but for those of you who are in North America, you'll know Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, right? What do you think the number 2 ingredient in Kellogg's Frosted Flakes is? It's not sugar. No, it's corn, because the number 1 ingredient is sugar. Do you understand? Like, they put it in everything because it stimulates your appetite and it allows them to sell more food. So that's your next homework assignment, is over the next week or so, I just want you to notice sugar. In fact, if you really want to play the game with me, do this for me. Take a photograph of it. If you're on Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, or whatever your platform is, take a photograph of it with the sugar as the number 2 or number 1, especially in products where you're just shocked, where you're going, look, obviously sugar's in a chocolate bar. You don't have to send that one to me. But if you see sugar in things, like, you're going to be shocked to find that some of the bacon that you buy has sugar in it. Smoked salmon has sugar in it. Like, you're going to be amazed to find bread has sugar in it. And not all bread, some breads, but I'd love it. Go out there, take photographs, tag me on Instagram, send it off to me. We'll create a big collage of sugar so it can stop hiding. And what I want to do is I also want to share with you a psychological principle, that psychological and physiological principle that we use in WildFit that really helps people change their relationship with food. Before I do that, let me tell you something. What's really interesting for me is why people's willpower, including my own, doesn't work. And so I want you to think about willpower, because people think about willpower as something they either have or they don't have. Oh, I don't have willpower. Okay, I want to show you something. Willpower is something that everyone has, but that because most people are a tiny bit schizophrenic about their relationship with food, it means the willpower is either in the possession of the food angel or the food devil. So when somebody says they don't have any willpower, what they really mean is that their willpower is currently on the side of the food devil, which means they have tremendous willpower. They're going to find bad food. They're going to eat that food. They're going to eat more. Even when they're full, they might even eat a little more. They're going to give in to exceptions all the time because their willpower says, I will have bad food. That's what it means. Willpower just means what you will do, right? You have will. You can't, free will, willpower, I will eat this. Now, what most people do when they try to exercise their willpower is they try to take the willpower and take it from the food devil and give it to the food angel. And they go, yes, I'm on a diet. Yeah, I'm 3 days in. I'm like 3 days. I haven't had sugar in 3 days. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. No. Oh, you made apple pie for dessert? Yeah, I've been 3 days without sugar. I know you made it though, didn't you? You know, I feel bad about that. Oh, and you're serving it with ice cream. That's like my favorite. I've been good. I've been good for 3 days. And at that moment, the willpower moves over to the devil And the devil says, I will have that. That's what happens. How many of you have had that experience? Come on, something like that, right? What I am going to show you is that we can get the food devil and the food angel to be on the same side, to be literally on the same side, where they both agree. And I can tell you that this is absolutely possible, and it happens for our clients. And I'm going to show you some of the ways that you can begin to have that feeling for yourself right now. The reason this is so very important is that if I share with you what my life was like before all this, I had ice cream. I loved it. I had Coca-Cola. I loved it. I lived on it. I really loved cookies and donuts and stuff like that, right? I did. And you know what's really fascinating? I don't even think about those things anymore. Like I'm not, and by the way, I'm not special. This can be done for you as well. I can go to a networking event and they've put all the donuts out. In the old days, it was like, donuts, I'm in. I mean, I wouldn't buy them. I wouldn't buy food like that. But if it's for free, it seems silly not to eat it. And so I would have some. And then I'd find myself back at that table again a little bit later. And then I'd find myself back at that table again a little bit later. You understand what I'm talking about, right? Well, now I walk past that table. People can later say to me, I can go, you know what? I don't think there's any food here. And they go, yeah, there's a table over there full of donuts. I won't even have seen it, right? Because my food angel and food devil don't regard that as food. And so I don't want it. Now, by the way, I'm not saying you have to give up donuts or cookies or ice cream forever. You don't. One of the core principles of WildFit is that it's all about getting your nutritional needs met. WildFit is really about getting all the good stuff. If you want to have the bad stuff, that's a totally different conversation. All I'm saying is that if you do want to create some freedom for yourself, then the way to create freedom is not by being free to eat everything you want to eat. The way to create freedom is being able to eat what you want to eat when you want to eat it and not eat it when you don't want to eat it. Okay, let me explain that a little bit more clearly, because that was a lot of words, right? So one of my clients, Frederick, he came along and he goes, yeah, Eric, I don't know if I can do this whole, WildFit thing. He says, I love my freedom around food. And I said, well, what does that mean? He goes, I love that I can eat whatever I want to eat whenever I want to eat it. And I said, I get that. I totally understand that. That makes sense to me. I do. I said, hey, what's some of the food that you really, are happy that you're free to eat? And he goes, well, I really love pizza. I really love pizza. And I go, okay, so if I had a pizza here right now, could you not eat it? And he goes, why would I do that? And I go, well, imagine you are already full. Let's say we just had lunch and then I brought out a pizza, a warm steaming pizza. Could you not eat it? And he goes, well, no, I'd have to eat it. I go, but you're full. He goes, yeah, but it's pizza. And I said, so where's your freedom? And he had an epiphany in that moment that he had no freedom. And that's how most people live. They don't actually have freedom. If you show up at a friend's house and they've cooked something that you're trying to avoid because you're on a diet or something, and you don't eat it as a result, you do eat it, then were you free? Did you give into the peer pressure? By the way, when we give into that kind of thing, we're only giving into it because we wanted to. If we're really honest, if we really think about it, we don't give in and eat the stuff we hate. We give in and eat the stuff that we really kind of secretly still want to have. So this is a very important point in our psychology, is recognizing that true freedom is the freedom to eat what you want and not eat what you don't want when you want. Does this make sense to you guys? All right. So with that, what I want to do is I want to share something with you that is a really important part of what we do at WildFit. And it's something that we could easily be talking about for, an entire day. I'm going to cover as much of it I can here to give you the value that I can from it now. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about something that's called human hungers. And this is really important because the 6 human hungers are all about the primary drivers that get you to eat. Right? So the 6 human hungers are about what makes people eat. So there are 6 primary reasons that people eat. And by evaluating those reasons, we can help people to be more conscious of their food decisions. So what this really means is that at any given point in time, when you make the decision to eat some food, that motivation is being stimulated by something. And what we've discovered in WildFit is that there are 6 primary stimulations. And we call those the 6 hungers. So the first one is called nutritional hunger. This is the only true version of hunger. This is where your body is running low on some nutrients. and it's running low on some nutrients. It's maybe you're missing some vitamins or minerals, or maybe you're low on some healthy fats, or you're low on some proteins or iron or any number of things. Okay. And what happens is that when your body starts to run low on those things, it generates two different messages. One is a general hunger, because of course in nature, we really didn't have a huge amount of choice about what we ate. We just ate what was available, right? What was ever was in season at that time, that's what we had to get. And so when we were running low on nutrients, the body would simply say, hey, go eat. And hopefully we're going to get the nutrients we need. And then in some cases, we might have a rather specific feeling of a craving. We might feel a craving for salts or a craving for fat. And so that might push us to go toward a particular food item. I want to be very clear that if you are having a craving for a particular food or a particular brand of food, then it's not about nutritional hunger. Nutritional hunger might be in the background, but if it's a particular food or a particular brand of food, it's going to be one of the other hungers that we'll address in a moment. Now, the key thing to avoid nutritional hunger is obviously to have the highest possible density of nutrition in your diet. And again, this goes back to why the food industry loves feeding us nutritionally empty food. When they feed us nutritionally empty food, then we are more consistently hungry. So that's nutritional hunger. And by the way, as we go through these hungers, if you have any questions about these hungers or how to deal with them, make sure you pop that in there and we'll definitely get to them. Now, the next hunger, you might think I'm a little crazy when I talk to you about it, but the next hunger is actually not hunger. It's called thirst. But the reason that it is one of the hungers is that it's really important to remember that for the vast majority of our history, we derived most of our hydration, we got most of our water from the food that we ate. We didn't have pottery. We didn't have a water bottle to carry around water in. So yeah, when we found water, we would drink as much as we could. But as we couldn't transport water, we had to find water in plant sources. So a huge amount of the food that we ate was actually about getting us hydration. So that means that when our body starts to feel a little dehydrated, it sends a signal, and that signal is eat something, you're dehydrated. Now, the thing that you think of as thirst, right, when you've got a dry mouth or a dry throat, that's a different issue. In fact, that's either one of two things. It's either that you have a dry mouth or it's that you're now so far into dehydration that you're actually generating thirst. But the initial feeling of dehydration creates hunger because evolutionarily speaking, that is how we got our water. We would be dehydrated, and then the next thing you know, we'd go over and we'd eat something and we'd get water from it and so on. So one of the ways that we can deal with that hunger and make that hunger less powerful in our life is by making sure that we hydrate ourselves very, very well, both through water-rich foods and through water itself. Another human hunger is variety. And this is a really interesting one. And we evolved this craving I believe, largely to make sure that we did get a variety of different nutrients. In other words, if in nature, one food was very, very abundant, then we would be lazy maybe, and we would just eat lots and lots of that food. But this craving would kick in and it would say, hey, hold on a minute. Hold on a second. We got to get something different. We need something else. And that would drive us to get something else because there's no one food that has every nutrient we need. Now, the challenge is today, there's so much variety around us that we are stimulating this need for variety with all kinds of different things, and most of them are unhealthy. Plus, the food industry knows that we have this craving for variety, so it's always saying, hey, something new, something amazing, come and get variety, right? And so what we need to do is make sure that in our lives, particularly when it comes to our plant sources for food, we should be seeking out the widest possible variety of vegetables to have over the course of the year. Bear in mind that historically humans have been eating about 200 different plant species a year, whereas now the average person in the West is eating less than 5. And the only reason we can even get that up to 5 is that the Food and Drug Administration, which should really be called the Food and Drug Manufacturer Protection Agency, but the Food and Drug Administration has decided that, tomato sauce counts as a vegetable, so pizza is now a vegetable. I mean, it's insane, right? So variety is something we have to watch out for. And one of the ways we can deal with that is by making sure we have the widest possible variety of healthy foods. Then there's low blood sugar hunger. Low blood sugar hunger is a very different thing. And what this is, it's not actually a form of hunger. It's a form of running low on one type of fuel. Now, humans run on fat and we run on sugar. Fat is what we're supposed to be burning to run our basic overheads, just to keep ourselves, alive and to walk around and breathe and run the brain and all this kind of stuff. And sugar is meant to be a fuel that we use in emergencies, in adrenaline moments, when we have to move fast, lift a lot, when we're under stress, then we're supposed to burn sugar. The challenge is that in our life today, with the level of stresses that we face and the amount of sugar that's in our diet, most of us have become, which means we're burning sugar on a fairly regular basis. And so what happens then is when we suddenly get low on sugar, we have a crash. And that's the 4 o'clock crash or the 2 o'clock crash, where it's suddenly, I'm so low on energy. And that's because we've gone on low blood sugar. And then that might cause things like moodiness. Not you, I'm sure you don't do that, but maybe somebody who gets a little moody when their blood sugar runs low, or that they suddenly have cravings that they can't control. Suddenly they got to have a piece of chocolate or something like that. And by the way, low blood sugar hunger can also stimulate things like depression and sadness, which of course we will then satisfy with the next hunger, which of course is emotional hunger. Emotional hunger is maybe the most insidious and maybe one of the most dangerous forms of dysfunctional eating. Basically what this means is that you have an emotional need in your life and you satisfy that emotional need with a food. Now, let's be really clear about this. Humans have some fundamental emotional needs just to maintain their psychological health. They have some fundamental emotional needs. And so when they have these needs and they don't meet them, they will find a way to solve these needs. They will absolutely find a way to fill these needs. And they'll fill them whether with good or with bad methods. For example, a child that's feeling ignored will act up so that the parents can yell at the child, because being yelled at is preferential to being ignored. Being ignored means that child feels disconnected. And one of the fundamental needs of being a human is to feel connected, right? And so in that moment, the child would rather feel connected in a negative way than disconnected. So our need to fill our emotional needs is so powerful that we'll fill it with either positive or negative, but we will fill it. And so we're at a place in our lives right now where, many times I'm feeling a little sad, and guess what? Ice cream could fix that. Or I'm going to the movies and I have this, I just feel like I have to have the popcorn. Like it's suddenly this moment where a habit kicks in, an emotion kicks in, and we have to fill that emotion with the food. In fact, just recently I was working with a private client and coaching, and we were talking a little bit. She'd done WildFit once before and done very well with it and wanted to come back and get some additional coaching. So here she was. And so here she said, well, the thing is, I've dealt with I don't have any of the old cravings. I feel fantastic. But she says, every now and again, every week or two, I just feel this real urge to have icing, or frosting, from a cake or cupcake or something like that. And so we talked a little bit about it. And then finally I said to her, well, I'm curious. Did your mom make icing at home, like homemade? And she goes, no. She got it in these cans. And I go, oh, really? Tell me about that. And she goes, yeah. She'd get these cans. And then I would sit down under the table and hide under the table. And while I was hiding under the table and my mom turned away, I would reach up real quick with a spoon and scoop some out. And my mom would try to catch me. And it was this real game and it was fun. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah. And I said, so how are you feeling right before you have ice cream? And she goes, I don't know. I'm just on my own. Or not ice cream, icing, I should say. And I said, so is it possible that icing is connected to love from your mother? And she had a phenomenal breakthrough in that moment, because that's exactly what was going on. You really have no idea sometimes how many of our decisions are being made because of things that happen to us when we're children. I read a paper written by some psychologists about adult habits, and they said one of the funniest things of all is that there are adults that can't stand up while they're having ice cream. Like they have to sit down. Like if you can do a study where where they don't even know what's being studied, but you give them an ice cream and they go and look for a bench to sit down on or a table to sit at. And then when you interview them later, it turns out here's what's going on. When their parents used to take them to the fair or to the market or to Disney or whatever, and their parents finally had enough of children running around everywhere, they go, okay, who wants ice cream? Who wants ice cream? Okay, you got to sit for your ice cream. And so as a child, they were told they had to sit while they're having ice cream. And it turns out later in their mid-40s, sit down. A lot of our decisions are automatic. And what we need to do is start to pay attention to those and notice that very often we are filling an emotion with a food. And as a result of that, we're filling our arteries and we're getting overweight and we're causing all kinds of challenges. The other thing to remember is that very many of the foods that we regard as emotionally satisfying are only emotionally satisfying for the immediate minutes that we're having that food. And that very often that very same food causes us to sink right back into the emotion we were having before. As an example, if somebody's feeling a little depressed or sad, and then they suddenly go out and have this big here ice cream that you can see on the side, they're going to feel good, not when they're eating the ice cream. They're going to feel good when they make the decision to eat the ice cream. Then they're going to feel good while they're eating the ice cream. And then half an hour later, how are they going to feel? Yeah, exactly. So it's a temporary fix at best, and it's damaging to the body. So what we want to do, by the way, I'm not saying you can never have ice cream again. What I'm saying is that we have these things way more than we should because we're eating them for the wrong reasons. And then the sixth hunger is empty stomach hunger. And this is not hunger at all. This is a feeling. This is a situation where your stomach gets empty because you haven't eaten in a while and your stomach has processed everything that's in there. And that feeling, because most people are nutritionally hungry most of the time, gets linked up to a feeling of hunger. And the next thing you know, people simply eat to fill their stomach. Now, something you need to know about the stomach is that it evolved with the capacity to stretch out to handle large volumes of food when it was feast time. For example, the hunters were successful and there's lots and lots of meat, stomach needs to stretch. The fruit is in season, there's lots and lots of fruit on the tree, stomach needs to stretch. But then the stomach would shrink back down. It would shrink back down for when food was a little bit more scarce. The problem is most of us have vastly stretched stomachs because of our cycle of 3 big meals a day and that kind of stuff. And so then when we have empty stomach hunger, we have to eat even more food to fill it. So one little experiment you might want to try is if you notice in the morning when you wake up, because that's probably the only time of day that you truly, truly have an empty stomach. In the morning when you wake up and your stomach is empty, before you eat any food, just drink a glass of water and feel it go down and feel it go into your stomach and let it pass through. And notice that that feeling of an empty stomach is not actually hunger at all. It is feeling of an empty stomach that has been linked up to hunger. So I hope that 6 hungers is helpful to you guys. I really would love for you to do a little bit of, homework in a sense, and just take a look and pay attention. What is driving my decision to eat this food? Is it my emotions? Am I actually nutritionally hungry? Is my blood sugar a little low right now? Am I craving variety? Is it some combination of them? One of the things we joke about during the WildFit Challenge, it's almost like these are all different hungers that are like little monsters, and they all gather together, And what happens right now for most people in the Western world is that they are starving. I know it doesn't seem like that because they're overweight, but the fact is they're so low on nutrients that emotional hunger comes along one day and he goes, "Hey, dude, hey, nutritional hunger. I'm feeling low. How about you?" "Yeah, me too." "All right, I have an idea. Let's send a message over to the nervous system that pizza and ice cream are a good idea." And the nutritional hunger is going, "Well, I'm so low, just eat whatever you can." And then they gang up, and the next thing, the rules are flexible. So over the next week, just pay attention to that. Take a look at what's driving your decisions. And if you really want to dig, I want to dig deeply. And I'd love to dig into that with you through a really powerful combination of deep education about what the human diet really is. Now, there are some subtle differences here and there. Some people are more sensitive to this. Some people are more sensitive to that. Men and women have some nutritional differences in what their requirements are. But fundamentally, all humans require the same makeup of vitamins, minerals, fats, proteins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all have the same nutritional requirements, and mostly we have a fairly similar set of food processing capacities. So once we identify what that human diet is, we make a major change in our lifestyle. If we can also then handle the psychology. If we can then handle the psychology and start making decisions from a real position of freedom. I want to be really clear. WildFit is not about being obsessive about avoiding this and avoiding that and avoiding this. WildFit is about being obsessive about getting all the healthy food in. Because I want you to think about something. If we take all the bad food away from somebody, all the bad food away, and we give them lots and lots of good food, but we take out all the vitamin C, what's going to happen? They're going to get sick. Even though all the bad food is gone. Far more important than getting rid of the bad food is getting the good food in. And so we're going to provide you a really solid education about nutrition. And then secondly, some really excellent psychological games and structure to help you change your patterns, the way you think, so that you're not having to debate with yourself about food, so that you're like, no, I just don't want that anymore, or I don't want that today. Does this make sense? I hope so. Here's how we do it for people. When we first started working with clients, years and years ago, it was just me. It was me, and I'd work with a friend one-on-one and kind of help them out and get good results, and that was fine. And then one day my team said, hey, why don't we try and turn this into a group coaching thing so we can help more people? So about 4 years ago, we took on a group of about 8 clients, and they were our first 8 clients, and we were blown away by the results they got. And that was without all the support that we can provide now. I mean, it was a very different thing then. We still got really excellent results. And so then that got the next class and the next class. And incidentally, we were doing no marketing for this. It was just simply happening because I was mentioning WildFit at some of my business programs, and our clients were going off and telling their friends, or our clients simply looked so different that their friends asked them. Great. And it grew and it grew, and it got to the point where I could no longer do all the coaching for people. There were just more people wanting to do it than I could physically deal with. And so we did a couple of things. We digitized the program and put it online so that people all over the world could do the program, whether or not they could meet with me. And we started certifying coaches. So we now have certified WildFit coaches in, I think, 7 or 8 countries around the world. And so that gives people access to that resource. And what we did is then combined all of this into a very, very carefully constructed 3-month behavioral change training program that absolutely transforms people's lifestyle. It's not about a diet. We're not saying do this for 90. We're saying we're going to guide you in the process of changing the way you actually think and process and decide what's going on around the way your food is. And so the way that works is that it's available a couple of different ways. There's a video training model where people can just simply, anytime you want, it starts every Monday. You go to getwildfit.com. You can sign up and start the program on any Monday,